I noticed the way my mother's finger glided across her phone, smooth and emotionless, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. She didn't hesitate. She didn't sigh. She simply muted the call, and then blocked the number entirely. "My mother is becoming exhausting," she said, adjusting the cuff of her designer sleeve. "She's 93. These so-called emergencies are just attention-seeking at this point." Across the table, my Aunt Lorraine lifted her wineglass and shrugged, her tone light, almost bored. "Honestly, she's had a full life. At some point you stop fighting nature." Something in my chest went cold. In that moment, I understood I wasn't merely the family disappointment. I was the only one who still felt anything at all. To understand why they could dismiss a woman's life so casually, you have to understand the family I was born into. The Whitmores looked impressive from the outside, old money manners, glossy smiles, curated success, but inside, there was nothing alive. Everything was transactional. My father, Richard, measured people by their usefulness. My mother, Elaine, treated them like decor, either flattering or embarrassing. I had always been the embarrassment. I hadn't followed the approved path. No law degree. No corporate marriage. I worked at a small public library and lived alone in a cramped apartment where the radiator clanged all winter. They called my choices unambitious. My compassion embarrassed them more than my income ever could. The only person who never looked at me that way was my grandmother, Eleanor. She lived nearly 400 miles away in a quiet seaside town battered by wind and salt. While my parents sent me polite critiques disguised as advice, Eleanor mailed handwritten letters, dried flowers tucked inside, the paper faintly scented with tea and thyme. When my phone buzzed minutes after my mother blocked her number, I knew exactly what it was, the prepaid phone I'd bought her for emergencies. Her voice was barely there. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "I can't find my heart medicine. I'm frightened." I looked around the dining room. Crystal glasses, linen napkins, conversations about wine vintages. And far away, the woman who had loved them all without condition was struggling to breathe. I stood up and grabbed my coat. "Where do you think you're going?" my father snapped. "To the coast," I said. Lorraine laughed softly. "You have, what, a few $100s to your name? You'll waste it all just to sit beside someone who won't even recognize you tomorrow." "I'd rather be broke and decent," I said, "than wealthy and hollow." I left before anyone could respond. I had less than $600, a car that rattled when it idled, and miles of darkness ahead of me. The storm hit halfway through the drive. Rain battered the windshield, the road dissolving into shining black lines. I stopped once for gas, watching the numbers climb while my balance shrank. I drank bitter coffee that burned my tongue and kept driving. Their words echoed in my head. "She's lived long enough." How do you decide when a life stops mattering? By the time I reached the town limits, dawn was bleeding gray into the sky. My body ached, my eyes burned, and my bank account was nearly empty. I ran into the house expecting panic, expecting chaos. Instead, I found warmth. The fire was lit. The air smelled of cinnamon. Eleanor sat by the window, wrapped in a soft shawl, gazing out at the sea. She looked calm, strong. "Grandma?" I said, breathless. She turned and smiled, gentle and knowing. "Sit down, dear." The pills were never missing. She hadn't run out at all. Before I could speak, she picked up a small remote and pressed a button. Voices filled the room. My mother's irritation, my aunt's dismissal, my father's cold calculations. "Recordings." "I called them first," Eleanor said quietly. "Told them I thought I was dying. Then I called you." My legs gave out beneath me. "Why?" I asked. "Why scare me like that?" "Because I needed to know," she said, "who would come when it mattered." She reached for a folded slip of paper. It wasn't a prescription. It was a lottery ticket. She had won. An impossible amount. "I don't need money," she said. I needed certainty. The doorbell rang sharply. "They're here," she said calmly. "Right on time." My parents and aunt entered in rehearsed grief, already scanning the room. Eleanor didn't stand. She simply told them the truth. Everything was gone. The house, the accounts, the winnings, all placed in a trust one alone controlled. They protested, pleaded, claimed family. Family doesn't abandon you when you're afraid, I said. Eleanor smiled at me. Would you show them out? I did. When the door finally closed, the house felt lighter. We sat together, watching the waves. Later, she asked what I wanted to do with the fortune. I told her about libraries, about warmth, about quiet places that needed care. She laughed softly. We rested first. Then we got to work. The money wasn't the victory. The victory was knowing that every good thing built from it would remind them of exactly who they chose to ignore and who they tried to leave behind.